everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, including me putting up some recent training footage myself, it's time to discuss current events in the online fitness community. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Because AlphaDestiny, I'm gonna mention him again. I'm gonna go ahead because his people who follow him keep coming in defending him, and a lot of people, even people who like him, are coming in saying, "No, you're right. I follow him, but you're right." And that's what a lot of these younger kids aren't grasping. You know what? I thought he was kind of a good guy till I started looking at what he's saying, and people are saying, "Well, you know what? He's kind of pimped one of your programs. He's defended you." Well, so what? Just because someone said something nice about me doesn't mean that if they're putting out bad information or they're conning people in some way that I'm going to necessarily be cool about it. I could keep my mouth shut about it. That's always an option. But you guys see kind of how that works. Maybe that's not the best policy. If I want to put out the best information, I need to call out when people put out bad information. And a lot of what the guy says might be good. It might be true. But a lot of the problem here is that what the guy is saying and what he's doing isn't always safe. I'm not buying his excuses. Let's talk about the double jointed thing, for example. Let's talk about the double jointed thing. Because that's come up and people are saying, well, he has double jointed elbows. And therefore he focuses on accommodating resistance on his presses. Anyone see the problem with that? Does anyone know the causes, the physiological causes of hypermobile elbows? Now, only one of those causes is limited to a single joint in the body. All right? Only one of those causes is limited to a single joint in the body. And that's where it gets interesting, because the only cause that's limited to a single joint, meaning you're only going to have it in your elbows, is that you have a deformation in the joint that makes it seat deeper inside. All right? There's a deformation inside your joint that allows it to happen. That is actually the least common. So the odds statistically that that's what's causing it are pretty small compared to the others. But even if that's the case, that joint deformation, the very last thing you would want to do would be to overload at the top. And that's the term he's using, overloading, using extremely heavy weight with accommodating resistance. The weight on it is all at the lockout, and you're using a third of the weight at the bottom, because that's honestly what he does. Some people are like, what, he's using 400 pounds? Yeah, there's less than 200 pounds on his chest on those reps. When you're talking about reverse bands, reverse green bands, or reverse black bands, and a slingshot, less than 50% of that weight is on your chest at the bottom, even with 405 at the top. Right? That's just the reality, and anyone who's worked with accommodating resistance knows that. Now, guys are going to act like I don't know anything about accommodating resistance. I've discussed it in detail. I've spent hours talking about it. I've spent hours talking about bands for overspeed eccentrics, how to use them. I've used bands on camera. I used to own bands. I used to own my own personal chains. I used to take my own bands to the gym. We're going to get into the risks of that too, because you know what? Bands break. When you're training hard and heavy, bands break sometimes. So training with bands all the time with a heavy weight carries an inherent risk in and of itself that normal training doesn't carry. The conventional lifting doesn't. But you know, I actually know a lot about accommodating resistance, and I have a real good idea of what different bands do in terms of taking load off depending on how they're suspended. So when I tell you that what he's doing with 400 pounds on the bar is probably less than 200 on his chest, I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you as someone who's owned a slingshot, has benched with a slingshot on camera, I've benched with reverse bands on camera. I think I have a little bit of experience with these things. Years ago, all the way back when I lived in the UK. So the whole point there is that if he had that sort of thing, which is an impingement, he would be damaging his joints with what he's doing. That's not an excuse at all. Here's the other bigger problem. There's only two other intrinsic causes. It's either a major problem with muscle tone. I'm looking at him. He doesn't have a muscle tone problem. He wouldn't look the way that he looked if he had a muscle tone problem. And yes, tone is actually a real word. It has a medical meaning. Look it up. People who say there's no such thing. Yeah, there's totally such a thing as muscle tone. It's a muscle tone issue for some people. He trains, he lifts, you can see he has muscle tone. That's not his problem. Therefore, the only other possible cause is going to be a connective tissue disorder. meaning people who have a couple different disorders that cause them to not get enough collagen in any of their connective tissue, ligaments, tendons, even cartilage. All right, that's what causes the double jointedness, because hypermobility and double jointedness are the same thing. It's two terms for the exact same condition. People who are suffering from any of those conditions, they're double jointed in more than one joint in their entire body, that's going to be a system-wide thing. That's going to be a collagen issue. That's going to be a connective tissue issue. Those people shouldn't be training themselves. They should only be trained by an expert who knows how to work with them. I would personally be uncomfortable working with someone like that because the risk of injury is enormously high. All right, all these accidents, you guys have seen a lot of accidents happen with different things online with double jointed stuff. That's what happens with people with double jointed stuff. Try to start squatting 200 pounds or try to bench press 150 pounds. They get hurt real easy. These people are never going to be particularly strong. So herein lies the problem with this situation. If he actually has any of these conditions that are causing hypermobility, there's no way he wouldn't have injured himself already. And the one with the elbows, if it's elbow inclusive, so therefore it's not connective tissue related, it's joint structure related, those heavy lockouts he's doing from the accommodating resistance are eventually going to break down those joints. In a few years, he'll be done with the iron game. He'll be done pressing. That'll be the end of that. And so he'll be off YouTube at that point. And no one will have to worry about it, will they? So you've got that to deal with, and you've got the fact that his ADHD, and I'm going to be honest here, I could tell roughly what he's doing for his ADHD. Again, you can look at his eyes, you can look at his demeanor and tell that he is using either Adderall or Ritalin. Something you get good at with people over time, observing people and tell what drugs they use. Just like I've said before, and I'm not going to go through the names, there's at least one popular YouTuber out there whose girlfriend cuts on crystal meth. You can tell by her demeanor on the camera that she uses methamphetamine. All right, it's their telltale characteristics. AlphaDestiny is using a lot of Ritalin. He's using a lot of Adderall, using a pretty hefty amount. And again, you can see it in his eyes, you can see it in his demeanor. And those who don't understand, do a little watching, do a little reading, and just observe his mannerisms. Definitely sign of a pretty good amount of Adderall being used. Well, the problem is I've coached people before who are on Adderall. It's really hard to put muscle on people who are on Adderall, and the reason for it, it's a stimulant. It's fantastic, not the proper use, by the way, but for people who are using drugs incorrectly, it's a fantastic fat loss drug. A lot of people abuse it for that reason, because it speeds up metabolism as a stimulant and it suppresses appetite. It's kind of hard to gain muscle on it. So that's interesting, that he's using all this non-conventional training, gaining muscle, and on the Adderall. Again, his traps blow up as well. You guys might want to think about that for a moment. Are there other implications of that? Maybe. But the fact of the matter is, Adderall is a body composition changing drug all the way around. It can help people cut. Makes it hard for them to gain muscle. So when you say stuff like, I'm naturally enhanced, Adderall is used to change people's physiques. Again, you've got the look of that. By that same token, again, traps blow up really fast. You're on hefty amounts of Adderall, might not be natty. And I'm not saying where he's at can't be obtained natural in terms of size. I don't want people to think that I'm saying, oh, he's too big to be natty. He's not too big to be natty. Not too big to be natty. But the possibilities are there. And I mean, that could be speculation. But I do hate it when people jump up and scream about how they're natty, when they're clearly, at least on Adderall, that has physique changing properties in and of itself. Because again, a lot of people used to get leaner. But with the added point of it's very difficult to gain muscle on it. And a lot of people would point out someone's traps blowing up pretty quickly, and then claiming it's a gimmicky way that they've done it through some special muscle stimulation, especially when they're on something like Adderall to where it's harder to gain muscle. That sounds suspicious. For me, that would be a red flag as far as marketing goes. Doesn't mean he's using anything, but that's a possible red flag that would make me step back as someone who assesses the quality of products and say, wait a minute, this guy just trying to market stuff. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, isn't it? The ego lifting thing, people are like, well, he's training not just for his ego, he's training around his weak points. No, he's not. He's not training around his weak points at all. The explanations he gives aren't legitimate. Oh, I need to do this to blow my traps up. Heavy shrugs would blow your traps up. You don't have to take the risk of those insane 1,000+ pound rack pulls. there's no point in doing that and compressing your spine. And if you were actually double jointed and had hypermobility issues, you probably would have already damaged your back doing those a long time ago. You wouldn't have gotten to 1,000 pounds. So again, comes back to that other point of his excuse of double jointed elbows, and that's the reason he does the lockout work. It should be quite the opposite. You wouldn't want to be doing heavy lockouts with that. Again, you're going to damage your joints eventually, Alex. Again, you say things like that, but you don't really know what you're talking about. You're going to hurt yourself. And when you do, what are you going to do? All your YouTube followers are going to be like, well, this guy's an idiot. He got hurt. Jason was right. They're going to come watch me. So if you don't want your subscribers a year from now when you're too busted up to come over to me, you might want to rethink about what you're doing and go back to some conventional training. And there's where we get to the crux of it. Is what he's doing ego lifting, or is it marketing? Because ultimately, what he's promoting with his training would be the same conventional training that all of us are promoting. Guys like me are promoting. Tons of other guys, even everyone from Bill Starr to all these other coaches, even guys like Alan Thrall. Actually, I would say Alan Thrall is one of the best guys out here on YouTube. If I really had to pick people who I would recommend besides myself to get advice from, Alan Thrall, even Omar Issoff, right? These guys have very sound training principles. They actually do know what the hell they're talking about. You're not going to go too wrong with their advice. I'm not saying I'd agree with all of it, but pretty good information from those guys. Better than the majority. Certainly better than the majority, but here's the thing. He wouldn't have anything special to market. He wouldn't be able to sell programs, because how would his programs be any different than mine? Or be any different than Alan Thrall's or anyone else who's promoting sound training methods? They wouldn't be. He has to add in the hype stuff. And now he'll claim it's because he gets bored. Well, you're on ADHD meds. You shouldn't be getting too bored with conventional training anymore. And that's his other thing. I hate conventional training. That's what he's claiming. And so I do unconventional training because it works, but conventional training usually works better. It's the reason it's conventional training. It's time tested. It's proven. We understand how it works. But here is the other thing. It does come down to ego, and it comes down to marketability. Because at the end of the day, I don't think he's that strong. I don't think he's as strong as he makes himself out to be. And it's a little different. Some guys will be like, well, you're not either. Well, you guys sometimes don't look at all my heaviest work. I'm not the strongest guy in the world, but I also don't display strength in the gym. I go to the gym to build strength, not to display it. You know what? I can do a bunch of triples with my 8 rep max. I can do triples with my 9 or 10 rep max. Film it on video and be like, that's my work sets. In fact, you guys saw some of that with the stuff I put out earlier. You go to the gym to build strength, not to demonstrate it. Because I know people are like, wait a minute, you're doing triples with a deadlift weight that we've seen you do slightly heavier for sets of 7. We've seen you do quite a bit heavier for sets of 5. Why are you doing that? Because that's all I have to do to build strength. Every time I get on the camera, even the majority of the time, I can just film some normal work sets. You know what? There's no need to show off all the time. No show-off stuff doesn't always make you any stronger. It's consistently putting in the work that builds strength. All right? It's about the thousands and thousands of moderately heavy reps you do, the thousands of repetitions you do with explosive speed, the thousands of repetitions. That's how you build strength over time. You don't have to go all out. You don't have to go anywhere near failure. You don't have to hit maxes to get stronger. In fact, that's how a lot of guys burn out real quick. That's what you're going to find. All these guys who want to do all this showing off, see how many of them are still deadlifting over 500 pounds per rep when they're my age. I'm 40 years old. See how many of them are doing that still. You can build strength without showing off, but that's the thing. Everything he does is showing off, and it's not even a good display of his strength, and he knows that. And some people caught on to that, and I caught some of the other people who have watched him who've commented, and they pointed out he's not really as strong as he claims to be. Like, he claims he deadlifts 585, but no one has seen him do a conventional 585 deadlift without straps. And he's claiming he's over 600 now, which, based upon his training, people can make calculations. You can certainly make calculations off your 5 rep maxes and stuff and determine where you're at. I mean, that can be done reasonably accurately. Nothing wrong with that. But where's the conventional work to base it off of? That's just some people pointed out that he actually, his 585 was a behind the back with straps. Same thing. Everyone's saying they've never seen him actually flat bench. So that's what I would say. It'd be like, Alex, instead of all this showboat stuff, because that's what you're doing to sell books, that's what you're doing to sell programs. It's all this showboat stuff of these accommodating resistance and partials and everything to make it look like you're using enormous amounts of weight. You know what, man? The power factor training guys did all this stuff already. I guess that's where you get it from. This is actually a time-proven con man method that was used to sell books 15, 20 years ago. Power factor training, static contraction training. Oh, we're moving this much tonnage. Look how heavy of a weight we're moving, 3 inches for repetitions. But the reality is that doesn't mean that you're able to actually move the weight when you have to. On a perfect example, I would say, you know what, Alex, what I would say to you, you claim that this works, that you've built strength, you've built muscle with all these cheat reps, all this accommodating resistance, board presses, everything else, then display it. You know what, you don't even need to hit maxes. Come in and do some comfortable weights that you don't even have to do grinders on. See how much you can deadlift for 3 reps. See how much you can flat bench with a pause on your chest, which is a legal bench, 2 or 3 reps. You know, if you think that you're anywhere near 300 pounds at the bottom of that accommodating resistance, and I'm saying he's not, I'm saying those 400-pound reps are 200 pounds off his chest. If they're higher than 200, then he should have no problem bench pressing 300 pounds for 2 or 3 reps off his chest with a pause. The way a power lifter is required to in a competition. He should be able to do that, because if he's strong and this program works and all this accommodating resistance and partials work, he should be able to do that. At least 1 rep. You know what? 275. Do 275 for a triple with a pause. If you want to do incline instead, that's fine. Do incline with 275. If you think that's better, if you don't want a flat bench, you hit the flat bench. Show what the training has done. Same thing on the deadlift. He claims he can deadlift 585 or 600 plus. Throw 500 pounds on the bar. No straps, conventional, and pull it from the floor for a few reps, 2-3 reps. See if you can do it, because that's the other thing, you know, I mean, all of his fanboys are up saying, well, he's stronger than you. Well, you guys have seen me pull 500 pounds for 7 reps with no grinders, with clean technique. If he should be able to do half of that, 3 reps instead of 7, that's a little under half. I'd take that as him being decently strong. Same thing. You guys have watched me incline, close grip, 300 pounds for reps, paused. Having flat bench a couple reps, 300 pounds, paused. Because that was just normal training. That wasn't failure. So he should be able to hit just some training lifts like that in the gym. Let's actually see what he can do. And you know, because if this stuff carries over and he is actually gaining muscle and strength, and if he's gaining strength, then it should be able to carry over. He should be able to perform on the conventional, plain old normal exercises. But I know for a fact that those lifts that he's doing don't work that way. They don't carry over. They don't make you as strong as people think they do. You know what? Anyone who can bench close to 300 pounds can do 600 pounds on a lockout in a rack if they train it enough. Plenty of 500-pound deadlifters could probably rack pull over 1,000 pounds like he's doing if they only got to move it 3 inches. There's sub 500-pound deadlifters who might be able to do that with enough practice. Doesn't mean that they're going to be strong. So that would be my challenge to him. Just go ahead and do it. Just do some normal lifting. That's not asking much. That's not world-class numbers. That's less than I lift. And I don't think that's unreasonable to say. You know, if his methods actually work, then do some actual normal training on camera and show what you can lift. Same thing. You do all these cheat rows. Is your lats actually strong? Are your lats and biceps strong? Do some pen lay rows, strict pen lay rows off the floor. Let's see what you can do for clean 3 or 4 reps. And I think that's a reasonable request. But the fact of the matter is, what I'm going to say as far as the training he's advocating, it's being done to showboat lifting really heavy weights, because he knows that his strength standards on the conventional lifts are not going to be there. And he knows that the methods that he's describing don't work that well. As far as all the accommodating resistance, they don't get any better results in normal training, but they carry a higher degree of risk. So what he's doing, he's throwing a fancy spin into stuff, into normally proven methods, full body training. A lot of the stuff he's promoting actually works. but he's throwing a special spin on it to make it sound like he's got something magical that works better, when the reality is it doesn't work any better, and it just carries a higher degree of risk. Those rack lockouts are going to hurt him. They're going to hurt his followers who do them. All this insane accommodating resistance and partials on all this bench presses and everything, same thing. People are going to get hurt eventually doing this. And everyone says, well, you know, the West Side Barbell guys do all that stuff. Yeah, they do. They're also training to do a quick lifting, and their injury rate is enormous too. All right, tons of those guys rip tendons and stuff off the bones and have to have surgeries. And that's fine. They do what they have to do to be world champions. He's not competing in anything. Most of his followers aren't competing in anything. Do you really need to rip tendons off the bone for overall fitness when you're not competing in a strength sport? Come on, guys. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Alex, if you don't change what you're doing, you are going to get hurt, or a bunch of your subscribers are going to get hurt. And when you get hurt, your YouTube money's over. So I'm going to recommend now, while you're still growing, while you're still climbing, step back away from the silly, dangerous crap that you're doing and go back to the conventional training. You're not doing it because it's boring. You're doing it because it doesn't let you show off. And if you can't show off, you don't have anything special to market. But you know what? Good information and good training programs based on sound training principles are marketable in the long term. They are marketable in the long term. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.